Get ready, because today's story will touch your heart. But first, subscribe to the channel and leave a like to support more exciting stories like this one.
Your children are alive. The four words came out of the mouth of the woman, standing in the doorway like a punch to Daniel's stomach. He felt his legs give way. The coffee cup he was holding slipped from his fingers and exploded on the kitchen floor, scattering shards everywhere. The noise echoed through the empty house, but he barely noticed. His eyes were fixed on that thin woman, with dark hair tied back in a simple ponytail, who stared at him with an expression somewhere between guilt and despair. "What did you say?" Daniel's voice came out hoarse, almost inaudible. "I said your children are alive. Thomas and Benjamin. They've been with me for 4 years." The world collapsed again. Daniel grabbed the edge of the table to keep from falling. For years. 4 years since that night at the hospital, when the doctor entered the waiting room with a stern face and said the twins hadn't made it. They were born too premature, she explained in a professional and distant tone. Their lungs hadn't developed in time. We did everything we could. Daniel remembered every second of that night. Amanda's muffled sobbing beside him, the cold hospital corridor, the heavy silence that settled between them on the drive back home. And then, in the months that followed, the marriage slowly crumbling like a condemned building. Amanda blaming herself, him burying himself in work so he wouldn't have to think, until she packed her bags and left, leaving only a note. "I can't look at you anymore without seeing what we lost." Now this woman was standing at his door, saying none of it was true. "Who are you?" Daniel finally managed to ask. "My name is Laura Ferreira. I was a nurse on the night shift when your children were born." She took a step into the house, her hands nervously intertwined. "I was there in the delivery room. I saw when Dr. Helena Cruz declared the babies dead, but I heard one of them crying. Very softly, almost imperceptible, but I heard it." Daniel felt his heart race. "That doesn't make sense. If you heard it, why didn't you say anything? Why did you let us believe that?" "Because I was afraid." Laura's voice faltered. "Dr. Helena saw me noticing. She pulled me into the hallway and said that if I told anyone, my career would be over. That no one would believe me against her word. She was the head of the maternity ward. I was just a newly graduated nurse with college debts to pay. So you stole my children?" The anger began to replace the shock. "I saved them." Laura raised her voice for the first time. "That night, after everyone left, I went back to the room where the babies were. They were alive, Daniel. Small, fragile, but alive. Breathing. If I hadn't done anything, they would have truly died." Daniel ran his hands over his face, trying to process it all. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be true. "Where are they now?" "At my house. 20 minutes from here." Laura took her phone out of her pocket and showed a photo. Two identical boys, with light blonde hair, smiling at the camera. One of them was holding a toy car. The other was hugging a small dog. Daniel felt tears burn in his eyes. They had Amanda's chin, the shape of his eyes. They were his children. He knew, deep in his soul, that they were his children. "Why now?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Why are you telling me this after 4 years?" Laura took a deep breath. "Because Dr. Helena is trying to blackmail me. She found I have the boys. Yesterday, she showed up at my house saying that if I don't hand over $20,000 in cash by the end of the week, she'll go to the police and say that I kidnapped 2 children. I don't have that money, Daniel. And even if I did..." She looked at him with teary eyes. "They deserve to know their real father. They deserve to know who they are." Daniel stayed silent for a long moment. Then he grabbed his car keys. "Take me to them. Now." Laura nodded and turned toward the door. As he followed behind her, Daniel took his phone and typed a quick message to Amanda. "We need to talk. It's about the boys." He hesitated for a second before pressing send. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. And leave in the comments what you think so far and which city or country you're watching from. The road was dark and empty as Daniel followed Laura's car through the sleeping city. unaware that the truth he was about to discover was far darker than anyone could imagine. Laura's house was small, a modest townhouse in a quiet neighborhood. Daniel parked behind her and got out of the car with trembling legs. Each step toward the front door felt like it weighed a ton. Laura unlocked it and motioned for him to come in quietly. "They're sleeping," she whispered. "Their bedroom is upstairs." Daniel climbed the stairs as if he were in a dream. The hallway smelled of lavender and plastic toys. Laura pushed a half-open door and turned on a small night light. There, in two beds surrounded by teddy bears and colorful blankets, slept two identical boys. Messy blonde hair, rosy cheeks, peaceful breathing. His sons. Daniel felt his knees weaken again. He held onto the doorframe for support. Tears began to stream down uncontrollably. For years of pain, guilt, absolute emptiness. And they were there. Alive. Real. Breathing. "Can I?" He could barely finish the sentence. Laura nodded. Daniel stepped into the room slowly and knelt beside the nearest bed. He extended his trembling hand and gently touched one of the boy's hair. It was soft, warm. The boy shifted slightly in his sleep and murmured something incomprehensible. Daniel covered his mouth to stifle a sob. "The one on the left is Thomas," Laura whispered from the doorway. "The one on the right is Benjamin. Or at least that's how I registered them. You can change their names if you want." Daniel shook his head. "Those are the names Amanda chose. When she found out she was pregnant, she was already sure those would be their names." He stayed there for long minutes just looking at them, memorizing every detail. The dimple on Thomas's chin, the small birthmark on Benjamin's neck, his sons, his boys. Finally, Laura touched his shoulder. "We need to talk downstairs." Reluctantly, Daniel stood up and followed her to the kitchen. Laura poured coffee, but he didn't even touch the cup. He was trying to organize the whirlwind of thoughts in his head. How was it possible to hide this for 4 years? He asked. Laura sat on the other side of the table. "I moved to this house 3 weeks after that night. Far enough from the hospital so no one would recognize me. Close enough that I could still find work. I registered the boys as my adopted children. I falsified some documents." She lowered her eyes, ashamed. "I know it was wrong. I know I committed crimes. But Daniel, if I hadn't done that, they would be dead," Daniel finished. The anger he felt was mixed with a strange, confused gratitude. "You said Dr. Helena is blackmailing you. How did she find out?" "I'm not entirely sure. I think someone from the old hospital saw me with the boys and mentioned it to her. Helena is smart. Very smart." Laura clenched her hands tightly. "She showed up here yesterday afternoon. Didn't even ring the doorbell. Came straight through the back gate. The boys were playing in the yard. She looked at them and smiled. It was the coldest smile I've ever seen in my life." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. "What did she say?" "That I had 2 options. Either I paid $20,000 in cash by Friday, or she would go to the police and say I kidnapped 2 children from the hospital 4 years ago. She said she had kept proof. Records showing I was on duty that night. Cameras showing me leaving with something wrapped in blankets." Laura wiped away a tear that rolled down her face. "And there's more. She said that if I involved you, if I told the truth to the biological parents, she would make sure I never saw the boys again. That they would go to a shelter while the case was investigated." "Then why did you come to me?" Laura looked at him with tired eyes. "Because I can't live in this lie anymore. And because..." She hesitated. "Because I found out something about Dr. Helena that changed everything." Daniel leaned forward. "What?" "I started investigating on my own. I looked for other nurses who worked at the hospital at the time. One of them, Carla, told me your sons weren't the only ones. In the last 6 years, there were at least 3 cases of babies prematurely declared dead by Dr. Helena. All twins, all from families in good financial conditions." Daniel's blood ran cold. "Are you saying that?" "I'm saying Helena Cruz wasn't just covering up a medical mistake. She was doing it on purpose." Laura opened a folder that was on the table and spread out some papers. "Look at this." bank transfers to an offshore account, all made shortly after the death declarations. High amounts. Very high. Daniel picked up one of the papers. 50,000, 75,000, 100,000. She was selling the babies. Not directly. I think she had a middleman. Someone powerful. Someone who paid well for healthy children for illegal international adoptions. Laura gathered the papers back together. I only managed to save Thomas and Benjamin because I got there before she finished what she had planned. But the others, Daniel felt anger boil inside him. He thought about all the other families who had gone through the same hell as him and Amanda. All the other mothers who cried for children who might be alive somewhere in the world. We need to go to the police, he said. With what evidence? Documents I stole illegally? A confession that I kidnapped 2 children. Laura shook her head. Helena has influence, Daniel. She knows important people. If we go without a plan, she'll destroy us and still make the boys disappear. Daniel fell silent, processing everything. Then he looked at Laura with determination. Then we'll do it her way. I'll get the 20,000. Laura's eyes widened. Ow! Leave it to me. Daniel stood up. But when I deliver the money, you'll be recording everything. Every word. And then we'll bring her down. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He sat in the car parked in front of Laura's house until the sun rose, just staring at the bedroom window where his sons were sleeping. When the morning light began to brighten the sky, he finally started the car and drove straight to the only place where he could get that amount of money quickly. The Oliveira family company had been built by Daniel's father over 30 years. A solid, respected construction firm. When the old man died, he left everything divided equally between his 2 sons, Daniel and his younger brother, Gabriel. Over the past 4 years, Daniel had stepped away from the business, letting Gabriel handle almost everything. The pain of losing his children had drained all his energy for anything beyond surviving. Now he walked into the office for the first time in months. The secretary looked up in surprise. Mr. Daniel, I didn't know you were coming today. I need to talk to my brother. It's urgent. Gabriel was in the boardroom, reviewing blueprints for a new project. When Daniel entered, he smiled broadly and stood up to hug him. What a nice surprise. I thought you'd forgotten you were still a partner here. The tone was playful, but Daniel noticed something strange in his brother's eyes. A tension that hadn't been there before. I need 20,000 in cash. Today. Gabriel's smile faltered. 20,000? What for? It's personal. Daniel, we're brothers. You can tell me. Daniel hesitated. Part of him wanted to tell everything, to shout that his sons were alive, that he was going to bring them home. But something made him pause. Maybe it was the way Gabriel avoided his gaze. Maybe it was the strange feeling in the air. I just need the money, Gabriel. It's mine by right. Half of this company is mine. Of course. Gabriel walked to the safe on the wall. But 20,000 in cash. It'll take a few hours for me to gather it all. Come back at 5 in the afternoon. Daniel agreed and left. Something wasn't right, but he couldn't pinpoint what. He spent the day preparing everything with Laura. They bought a tiny recorder that could be hidden in her clothes. They tested it several times until they were sure it captured everything perfectly. Daniel also bought a GPS tracker the size of a coin and planned to place it inside the envelope with the money. If she takes the money and meets with someone, we'll know, he explained. At 5 in the afternoon, Daniel returned to the office. Gabriel already had a black suitcase waiting on top of the desk. It's all there. 20,000 exactly. He pushed the suitcase toward Daniel. Are you sure you don't want to tell me what's going on? I'm sure. Daniel picked up the suitcase, but before leaving, he turned around. Gabriel, do you remember that night at the hospital? When the boys... Of course I remember. Gabriel lowered his eyes. It was the worst night of my life, too. Seeing you and Amanda destroyed like that. The doctor who was there. Do you remember her name? Gabriel grew very quiet for a moment. When he looked up, there was something different in his eyes. Something cold. Why are you asking that now, Daniel? Just answer. It was Helena something. Cruz, I think. What? Daniel felt his stomach churn. How did Gabriel remember the doctor's name after 4 years? He could barely remember the events of that night himself. It had been so traumatic. No reason. He left quickly, gripping the suitcase tightly. In the car, his hands were shaking so badly that he had to pull over a few blocks away. He took out his phone and called Laura. "Change of plans," he said as soon as she answered. "I need you to investigate something for me. My brother, Gabriel Oliveira. See if you can find any connection between him and Dr. Helena. You think your own brother." I don't know what to think, but he knew her name. After 4 years, he remembered her full name. Daniel took a deep breath. "Just look into it, please." 3 hours later, Laura called back. Her voice was trembling. "Daniel, you need to sit down before I say this. Just say it. I found bank transfers from your company's account to the same offshore account Helena receives money from. Several transfers over the last 5 years. The first one was made 2 months before your sons were born." The world spun around Daniel. He pulled the car onto the shoulder because he could no longer see the road clearly. "How much?" "The first one was 100,000. The others varied. 50,000, 75,000, always labeled as medical consulting." Laura paused. "Daniel, there's more. I found emails exchanged between Gabriel and Helena. They've known each other for years. And in one of those emails, 3 months before the delivery, Gabriel asks about the procedure and whether she was sure that no one would get suspicious." Daniel hung up the phone. He got out of the car and vomited on the sidewalk. His own brother, his own blood had planned it, had paid to have his sons declared dead. But why? Why would Gabriel do something like that? Then he remembered. The company. With Daniel destroyed by grief, Gabriel had taken full control. All the decisions, all the contracts, all the money. The pain of betrayal was worse than anything Daniel had ever felt. Worse even than mourning his sons. Because this time, the person who had destroyed him was right there, alive, smiling at him every day. Daniel got back into the car. He opened the suitcase of money and placed the GPS tracker among the bills. Then he called Laura. "The meeting with Helena is tomorrow at 8 at night. Right?" "Right. Good. Because before that, I'm going to pay a little visit to my brother. And this time, he's going to tell me the whole truth, even if I have to rip every word out of his mouth." He hung up and drove back home. He locked all the doors, closed all the windows. And then, for the first time in 4 years, Daniel Oliveira let the pain turn into something else. Pure rage. Daniel arrived at the office at 7 the next morning, before any employees. He used his key to enter through the side door and went straight to Gabriel's office. He sat in his brother's chair and waited. Gabriel showed up at 8:15. When he saw Daniel there, he stopped in the doorway. "What a scare. What are you doing here so early?" "Sit down." Daniel's voice was calm, dangerously calm. "Daniel, I have a meeting in." I said sit down. Something in his tone made Gabriel obey. He pulled a chair and sat on the other side of his own desk, their roles now reversed. "I'm going to ask you a question," Daniel began, "and depending on your answer, you still have a chance to get out of this alive. Understand?" Gabriel turned pale. "What are you talking about? Why did you pay Dr. Helena Cruz to declare my sons dead?" The silence that followed was deafening. Gabriel opened and closed his mouth several times, but no sound came out. Daniel saw the exact moment the mask fell from his brother's face. The moment he realized he had been found out. "How did you?" Gabriel whispered. "It doesn't matter how I know. What matters is that I know." Daniel leaned forward. "So I'll ask again. Why?" Gabriel ran his hands over his face. When he spoke, his voice was different. Harder, without a trace of the loving brother Daniel once knew. "Because you always had everything. Always. Dad loved you more. Gave you the best education. Prepared you to take over the company. And me? I was just the younger son who had to accept the scraps." The words came out loaded with years of resentment. "When Amanda got pregnant, you were going to have children too. Heirs. And I was going to keep being nothing. So you decided to destroy me? I decided to take what was mine by right." Gabriel stood up, slamming his hands on the desk. You were so focused on being the perfect father, so busy planning your children's future, that you didn't even notice what I was doing. The accounts I was manipulating. The contracts I was diverting. I was building my own empire on your back. And Helena, how did she get involved? I met her at a medical event sponsored by the company. I found out she had certain useful skills, that she had already done jobs for other people. People with a lot of money. Gabriel gave a crooked smile. She didn't kill your sons, Daniel. She just declared them dead. They were supposed to be sold to a wealthy family in Europe. $50,000 each. I was going to keep half. Daniel felt bile rise in his throat. But Laura saved them. That idiot nurse. Gabriel spat the words. Helena told me about her yesterday. Said the woman had shown up asking for money. That she probably had the babies. I told Helena to handle the problem. By offering $20,000 in blackmail? No. By offering $20,000 to track where Laura lives. Gabriel sat back down, relaxed now that the truth was exposed. The plan was simple. Laura delivers the money tonight. Helena follows her home. Then my men go in and take the children. This time they'll go where they should have gone 4 years ago. Daniel couldn't hold back. He leapt over the desk and grabbed Gabriel by the collar, slamming him against the wall. They have names. Thomas and Benjamin. They're my sons. They were your sons. Gabriel smiled, even with his face pressed against the wall. Now, they're just valuable merchandise. Daniel raised his fist, ready to strike his brother's face, when he heard a voice behind him. I wouldn't do that if I were you. He turned around. Dr. Helena Cruz was standing in the doorway, elegant in her white coat, holding a cell phone. I just called the police. Reported a break-in and assault at the office. She smiled coldly. They're already on their way. And when they arrive, they'll find you attacking your own brother. An unstable man, still grieving the loss of his sons 4 years ago. They'll arrest you, Daniel. Daniel released Gabriel and stepped toward her. Do you really think you're going to get away with this? I always do. I have contacts, influence, money. Helena slipped the phone into her pocket. And you have nothing. No evidence. No witnesses. Just accusations from a desperate man. That was when Daniel smiled. For the first time since all of this began, he smiled. You're wrong. I have exactly what I need. He took his phone out of his pocket and pressed a button. Gabriel's voice echoed through the room, clear as crystal. She didn't kill your sons, Daniel. She just declared them dead. They were supposed to be sold to a wealthy family in Europe. The recording continued. Every word, every confession, everything. Helena turned white. Gabriel tried to grab the phone, but Daniel was faster. You know what's funny? Daniel said, still smiling. I didn't even need this confession, because Laura has been at the police station for 2 hours already, with all the bank transfers, all the emails, and with my 2 sons, alive and healthy, ready to take a DNA test. The sound of sirens began to grow louder outside, but this time, Daniel knew they weren't coming to arrest him. The police really are coming, he said, but not for me. Laura called a detective friend of hers, told him everything. About you, Helena, about the other babies you sold, about the whole network. He looked at Gabriel, and about the traitorous brother who financed all of this. The door burst open. 4 police officers entered, guns drawn. The detective in front looked at Helena and Gabriel. Dr. Helena Cruz and Gabriel Oliveira, you are under arrest for child trafficking, document falsification, fraud, and conspiracy. Daniel walked out of the room as they were being handcuffed in the hallway. He leaned against the wall and finally let the tears fall. They were no longer tears of pain. They were tears of relief. 2 weeks later, Daniel was sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by colorful building blocks. Thomas was to his right, focused on building a tower that was already twice his height. Benjamin was on his lap, flipping through a picture book and pointing at each animal with his little finger. That's a lion, Daniel said for the 5th time, and Benjamin laughed as if it were the funniest thing in the world. The doorbell rang. Daniel asked the boys to keep playing and when to answer it. When he opened the door, his heart tightened. Amanda was standing there, thinner than he remembered, with deep dark circles under her eyes, but still the woman he had loved for so many years. She was holding a small suitcase, and her eyes were red. "Hi," was all she managed to say. "Hi." Daniel stepped aside. "Come in." They stood awkwardly in the hallway for a moment, until a high-pitched laugh came from the living room. Amanda shuddered. "They're here." Daniel nodded. "Do you want to meet them?" Amanda covered her mouth with her hand, trying to hold back her tears. She nodded without being able to speak. Daniel guided her into the living room. When Thomas and Benjamin saw the unfamiliar woman, they stopped playing and looked at her curiously. Amanda knelt down slowly, as if approaching something fragile that could break. "Hi, my loves," she whispered. I'm your mommy." Benjamin, always the braver one, dropped the book and walked over to her. He touched Amanda's hair curiously. "Pretty," he said, and Amanda broke down in sobs. Daniel stepped back to give them space. He went into the kitchen, where Laura was preparing lunch. She had moved into the guest room the week before, after it became clear that the boys couldn't sleep without her nearby. "How is she?" Laura asked softly. "Broken, happy, confused." Daniel poured a glass of water. All at the same time, Laura stirred the pot on the stove. "Do you think she'll want me to leave?" "No. I talked to her on the phone yesterday. She knows you saved the boys, that you took care of them when no one else could." Daniel touched her shoulder. "She wants you to stay. The boys need you. We need you." Laura wiped away a tear and smiled. "Thank you." Lunch was awkward at first. Amanda could barely eat, just kept staring at the boys as if they were mirages that might disappear at any moment. But little by little, she began to relax. Thomas showed her his favorite drawing. Benjamin insisted she taste his juice. After the children went down for their afternoon nap, the three adults sat in the living room. Amanda held a cup of tea with both hands. "The detective called me yesterday," she said. "He said they found 4 more families. Babies that Helena had declared dead and sold. 3 of them have already been located in other countries. They're bringing them back." "And Gabriel?" Daniel asked, even though he knew it would hurt to hear the answer. 20 years in prison. Helena got 25. Amanda looked at him. "I still can't believe your own brother did this to you. To us. Neither can I." Daniel sighed, but he confessed to everything. The prosecutor said he didn't even try to defend himself. I think deep down he knew he had lost his soul a long time ago. Silence. Then Amanda said what had been stuck in her throat since she arrived. "I'm so sorry for leaving, for abandoning you when you needed me most. You were suffering, and you weren't." Amanda began to cry again. "I left you alone, Daniel. I let you sink. I should have stayed. I should have fought with you." Daniel went to her and took her hand. "There's no point thinking about what we should have done. What matters is that we're here now, and our sons are alive. We have a second chance, Amanda. Not many people get that." She squeezed his hand. "Do you forgive me? If you forgive me for not realizing what Gabriel was doing, for being blind to the evil of my own brother. There was no way you could have known." Amanda looked at Laura. "And you? How can I ever thank you? You risked everything. Your career, your freedom, your life. To save my babies." Laura shook her head. "I couldn't let them die. Not when I heard that first cry. It was so small, so fragile, but it was there. Life. Pure and simple." She smiled. "And they gave me a life, too. In the last 4 years, for the first time, I felt complete. I know I'm not their biological mother, but you were their mother," Amanda interrupted. "In a way that matters. You fed them, changed diapers, stayed up when they were sick. You were their mother as much as I am." The 3 people sitting in that living room had been broken in different ways. Betrayal, loss, guilt. But there, together, they were finding something that had seemed impossible just weeks earlier. Healing. When Thomas and Benjamin woke up from their nap, they found not 1, but 2 mothers waiting for them. And a father who had learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about who stays, who fights, who loves even when everything seems lost. That night, after the boys fell asleep, Daniel stood in the doorway of their room watching them. Laura appeared beside him. "Are you okay?" "I am. For the first time in years, I truly am." He looked at her. "Thank you. For everything." Laura smiled and walked away. Daniel stayed there for a few more minutes, just listening to his son's peaceful breathing. He thought about everything that had happened. The pain, the betrayal, the anger, and finally, the redemption. Life had taken his sons from him once. But this time, He wasn't going to let anything or anyone separate them again. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your like. Tell us in the comments what you thought and which city or country you're watching from. Sometimes second chances come disguised as the worst tragedies, and sometimes the family we build is even stronger than the one we're born